Ditch the balcony and join us at the drive-in. This is Arthouse Summer. I'm the MovieDude Eric, and the password to listen to this podcast is Walt Sydney.
And I'm Chris Tondevold.
And for this episode of Arthouse Summer, we have a special guest, Good Bad Flicks himself, Mr. Cecil Trachenburg. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
And in this episode, we're discussing Who Framed Roger Rabbit, starring Bob Hoskins, Christopher Lloyd, Joanna Cassidy, Roger Rabbit, Jessica Rabbit, Baby Herman, and Benny the Cab, directed by Robert Zemeckis. Is anyone really surprised that I went ahead and gave acting credits to certain animated characters? Because I feel like this movie wants us to believe that these characters actually exist. Am I wrong in doing that, or do you think I should be a little bit more normal?
I think it works because the characters, they really did feel real the way that they portrayed them. They did such a good job of interweaving the real world and the toon world that it made it easy to believe that these things really did exist. I'd say they did a much better job with this than something like Cool World. But Cool World, unfortunately, had a whole other host of issues that kind of prevented it from being what it was supposed to be. But
we're going to talk about that. There's an interesting backstory to Cool World, but there's also a huge, awesome backstory to this movie that I honestly cannot wait to talk about. But before I do, though, Chris, what is your take on all this?
I mean, they're real, right? It's real to me.
There you go. All right. Who Framed Roger Rabbit came at a very interesting time in my life, as well as the life of Walt Disney Studios. I'm going to talk from a personal experience right quick because, honestly, this was the first non-Star Wars movie, VHS movie, that my family owned. And I'll be honest, I don't think if my parents had known what was in this movie when they bought it, I don't think they would have bought it. This movie definitely is not what you consider to be Disney-esque, or at least Disney-esque in the sense of kind of classic Disney, right?
For sure, yeah. It feels more Looney Tunes.
It does. And the thing is there's so much about this movie. Like when I decided to do this for Arthouse Summer, it's been about 15 years since I've seen this movie, and I completely forgot how different this movie is from other films of its time, and even to an extent what we've seen now. This is a very unique type of movie, and one that I think that even Disney would not have made if it weren't in that particular time in the late 80s when it was kind of in its own little unique situation, which I think is now called Dark Disney, if I'm not correct. Cecil, you did a whole video kind of tackling a bit of this Dark Disney in relation to the black hole. What do you know about this period?
Well, they for the longest time, it's always called the Dark Era of Disney. And recently, after Disney has kind of become the juggernaut that it is, there's a lot of rebranding going on. So now, you can't have a dark period of Disney. It gives the wrong. I know, and other people who were around during that period remember it. But they're talking. They're trying to aim it to the new generation, and they don't. There's a lot of kids today that don't know that Disney almost went bankrupt. And so for, a time being called the Dark Era of Disney, they don't want that. So now they're calling it the Bronze. Well, they're trying to rebrand it the Bronze Era of Disney. And I don't see anybody taking that one.
What is your familiarity, Chris, with 80s Disney, out of curiosity?
I'm familiar with Roger Rabbit for sure. If you tell me more movies that are in that area, I'd be probably right with it. Trying to remember for me, like when I was growing up, there were the staples like Bambi, Fox and the Hound was a big one for our family. And then just my sister loved The Little Mermaid, so I'm super familiar with that stuff. And I remember watching Roger Rabbit when I was young and being like, this is amazing how they were able to pull off pretty much everything flawlessly. And it was I think Cecil brought it up where it felt way more Looney Tunes. I completely forgot this was a Disney movie. Like when we were talking about this movie, you said it was on Disney Plus. I was like, are you sure it's not Looney Tunes? Because you have definitely Bugs Bunny in here, and then you also have Mickey Mouse in here, and it just blew my mind watching this back too.
Oh, we're going to talk about the rules that Warner Brothers had in order to get Looney Tunes into this movie. There is a lot here to talk about, but you brought up Fox and the Hound. Fox and the Hound was 83, if I'm not correct, and that's proto Dark Era. Like I feel like it wasn't entirely just Dark Era at that particular point, but it was leaning towards that, especially with that ending. I think that would have been an ending that even if Walt were still around at that particular point, he might have scoffed a little bit at that ending.
That movie's sad as shit, right? Like that hurt me when I was a child for sure.
Yeah.
And then what I feel like now is that Pixar has kind of taken the emotional weight of everything nowadays, and where those movies hit and feel a little bit different, rather than Disney proper.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how Disney liked it. In fact, this is up until about, I want to say about 10 years ago, Disney wanted to bury this under their Touchstone moniker. This was technically a Touchstone picture, so that was this is kind of showing how Disney felt about this movie. They wanted to release it. They knew they had something on their hands, but they also understood that this is not going to be considered something acceptable to families who want to go see the typical Disney movie. And this brings me to what I think is very fascinating about this movie. This movie was made in 1986 going into 1987. This had Robert Zemeckis, fresh off of Back to the Future. He had Steven Spielberg, who was if Steven Spielberg wasn't involved in this, it would have never happened. I can tell you that right now. Only he had the amount of clout in order to get all the different studios who had animation in this particular movie. Because we're not just talking about Disney and Warner. We're talking about King Syndication. We had talking about, I forgot who the owners of Betty Boop are. All these different animation studios had to sign off on this and allow this to happen. It kind of reminds me of a movie that happened, 2 years ago that Steven Spielberg was involved, that had all these licensed characters in it. I feel like, he's the guy who can make this stuff happen. But I'm curious though. Do you think that without or do you think that I'm wrong in thinking that Spielberg was the only one that could get this done? Do you think that there was an avenue where all these studios would have wanted to see their characters kind of interact with one another? As someone who would not mind seeing Superman and Spider-Man team up at some point.
I think it absolutely had to be exciting, because you really think about at the heart. Of course, you're going to have people that are working at various studios that are just money men, but you're also going to have people that are there that are genuine fans, and they're going to see the excitement of, hey, we get to have Steven Spielberg work on this with Zemeckis, and so they know it's in good hands. And then they're going to have all these caveats in there of the different characters, so that the characters are being taken respectfully, and they're not being portrayed in negative light, because there's always that thing that if they do something, it will devalue the quality of it if it's in a different property, and so many different legalese nonsense that they always panic over. God, Ready Player One, just to get onto that for a second, was a steaming pile of crap, and it had every single reference in it known to man practically, and it didn't really hurt any of them. So for them to panic over something like that, but at the time, there really wasn't anything else comparable. There wasn't anything else that pulled licenses from all these different companies. And I do think that Spielberg is somebody who does have enough clout and enough connections, and he's worked with enough studios that they were, he was probably the best person for them to work with. I can't think of another. Maybe Tarantino could pull it off, but I think that there would be a lot of companies that would be very skittish about letting him use their properties.
I don't know. I mean, Paramount would seem to be okay with him taking their most recognizable franchise out for a spin.
Yeah, you never know with them trying to give him Star Trek. Honestly, it whatever he does, even if he goes completely off the rails with it, it won't be as bad as the last Star Trek movie.
Woo! There we go.
Well, I think too. You have Zemeckis coming off of Back to the Future, right? And then you also have the basic second lead of that movie, Christopher Lloyd, in this movie. Yeah. So with Spielberg on top of that, now you have proven moneymakers to where the risk in theory is not that high, right? Mm-hmm. So you can then, pave the way to have studios work together rather than against each other, which is definitely the way that it is now, unless you just get bought by another studio. So I think that's another big thing that, Cecil kind of pointed out too, as far as the money men, that it even made sense to be able to do this and to make it to where I would have never thought something like this would be a huge blockbuster, but you got to think about it at the time that just the names that are incorporated into this project, and then the fact that it's, your nostalgia factor, which we're on a kick of nostalgia right now, right? Where everything is kind of being remade and redone. And I think that's what this hit. And it was just kind of like a perfect storm of everything that's in there. Plus, it's a really good story and more mature to where it's not just a kid's movie at this point. It's almost for all ages. Almost.
Well, the thing is, I have to kind of go back to how 1987 is, because at that particular point, again, like when I was 6 at the time when this movie came out. I was 7 when it came out on VHS, because we didn't have this instant gratification that we now have with our movies coming out like 3 weeks after it gets out of theaters. But at this particular point, whenever a parent sees Mickey Mouse or Bugs Bunny going to be in a movie, they automatically assume that the story itself is going to be child friendly, and this story is not child friendly. In fact, I will say this is extremely mature. This definitely plays off of film noir. There's a lot of noir elements to this, and it homages as much as it parodies film noir. And film noir is not known for being child-friendly. Even Bugsy Malone, which actually had children playing these characters, was not child-friendly.
Well, they killed each other with pies.
Well,
but they still killed they shot. They had pie. They had guns that shot pies. So they did die. It's just they died in a very ridiculous fashion.
Yes, and the thing is that for this. So there was a lot of risk, because it wasn't about the characters not coming off as good or coming off as popular with one another. It was more that this story was so mature that that parents might say, you know what, we can't trust Disney, we can't trust Looney Tunes, we're not going to buy the products because it's tied into this mature story. So there is a bit of risk here, but at the same time, I gotta give it to Disney for be willing, especially like Looney Tunes can kind of get away with it because they've been pushing the envelope basically since Merry Melodies. Disney does not. Disney is very protective of how Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and all of their characters are perceived as wholesome. And like even now, even with this movie, the Disney characters are extremely narrow as to what they do. The closest that you get to to a Disney character acting out is that Mickey kind of just allows Bugs to act like a dick. That's the closest that you get to seeing a Disney character act act obnoxious.
You
right?
just let Bugs be Bugs.
Yeah,
he is a stinker. What do you want from him?
Well, no, I mean, again, but I'm just saying that Disney is very careful about how they want their characters to be used. And I gotta say, there's something else I really want to talk about, or that I want to kind of bring up before we get into the film proper. And this is kind of an Avengers on the behind the scenes, because this is the last time that we have the actual people, the behind the scenes of Looney Tunes and Disney, who have worked on these properties, working together on this. Chuck Jones. This is the last. No, this isn't the last thing he's done. The last thing he's done was Stay Tuned, which, by the way, fucking awesome. And I'll fight anyone who says otherwise. But Chuck Jones. This is one of his last projects. Mel Blanc. I believe he dies like a year or two after this. The voice actor for Mickey. All the actors who have portrayed these characters before are all here. This is the last time that all of them play together. This is on par. I don't even want to say it's on par, but kind of think of it as like the Simpsons and Family Guy crossovers. This is kind of in that realm, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, if it's. I think that's what we were talking about earlier with like the studios bridging the gap between those two. You also have the talent there as well, and you're right as far as like Family Guy and Simpsons. I can't think of another pairing. I guess having like everybody from the MCU and whatever remains of the DC EU whatever worlds thing that they're calling it. That I guess that would be like the only other closest thing that you could even put to mind as far as what all the talent is that's working on this movie.
Yeah. But let's go ahead. Let's get into the film itself in proper. So, the first thing I have to say about the script for this movie is, as I was watching it for the podcast, I realized something. This film is lean. It either establishes things that are going to happen later in the movie, or it resolves things. I don't think there's even one shot in the film that, with the exception of one, and that was only because there was a deleted scene that kind of messed with it a bit. But each scene either resolves it sets up something or resolves something from the beginning. Even the first scene in the film establishes Roger Rabbit, Baby Herman. It also establishes the look of the film, or especially the animation aspects. It shows the Hollywood system. It shows how the live action people that there's a bit of a racism aspect to how they treat Toons as a second-class citizen. All of this stuff is set up in that first movie, and then of course we also get the Joel Silver acting like a dick, which I think is, well, I think it's warranted if anyone knows anything about Joel Silver, but no, do y'all kind of see that, or are there scenes that you think that just don't that don't mesh with the film?
I think overall it's one of those rare movies that it doesn't waste any time. Like, there are certain movies where there's highs and lows and lulls, and I mean there are parts that are more exciting and more engaging, but there's never a part in the movie where you start drifting. It's really a movie that does keep you engaged, and it's always moving things forward. It's always introducing new characters, or having characters exit, or having something really funny happen, or something clever. And it's it's a really unique film. It's very, very, very well edited. It's perfectly paced, and it's a shame that I guess we should be lucky, in a sense that it's such an anomaly. That way we can appreciate it more.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, even when I was 7 years old, when I was watching this movie, like, even I could watch this movie, and I did many, many times, and I kind of got to the point where I was able to even recite lines to this movie, and even though I wasn't as much of a cinematic snob as I am right now, but even I could realize, oh, so the star things that comes back. Oh, how Baby Herman's kind of antagonistic relationship with Roger, that comes back. The patty cake thing, which thank God I didn't recognize what the joke was on that one until I was much older. Even that pays off. There's all of these scenes pay off, with the exception of the when Eddie goes back in the. After he leaves Roger at the bar, and he goes back in the next scene, we have him with his shirt off with his tie on. That's the only scene that is kind of hanging, and the reason for that is because there's a deleted scene there that you could only see if you watch it on television. Have y'all seen the deleted scene by any chance?
No,
I don't think so.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick refresher. So at this particular point, the Weasels are looking for Roger, and at this particular scene, the Weasels get the drop on Eddie at his his office, and he gets knocked out, and then he wakes up and he has a toon face on him. It's a pig face. In fact, it was on one of the trailers for this movie, and he has to get the I think he has like some sort of dip, or he kept some of the dip from the judge, and he was able to get it off, but it got all over his shirt, so he had to take it off. And then of course he gets out, and that's when Jessica comes in, and I'll be honest here, it's a very freaky scene. It definitely, I can understand why they cut it out, but at the same time, though, it did kind of establish a bit about Eddie as a character. And so just seeing him with the shirt off when Jessica comes in, put him in the compromising situation a bit, which again also sets up the jealousy that Dolores has, establishes that Jessica is not will use every advantage that she has, and is not how do I put it? She'll go as far as she can to get what she wants. And I love the fact that even when Dolores and Eddie are coming out of the office, that she is in the car listening to them argue. Like she's always in the background, always paying attention to everything that's happening. And I think they were trying to set it up as kind of maybe a red herring of sorts, that maybe she was the one that was involved. Do you get the sense that that's what they were trying to aim for?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a storyline there of, you trying to believe that she will do anything and everything for Roger Rabbit. But I think following along with Bob Hoskins' character and the fact that he just does not believe that she still even likes this goofy little rabbit. I think there's that idea of, oh, she's a legit femme fatale for a second, and will use whatever means necessary, whether it's her womanly charms or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But I think they also do a good job of making sure, because Hoskins is kind of like the audience surrogate for this, right? So I think it's interesting that he's always questioning what is happening and trying to to even make sense of this relationship that is happening too.
What do you think, Cecil?
Yeah, I think that the dynamic there is you don't know. You really do you believe that this person really loves Roger? And like they did such a good job with that, of how they made her out to be like over the top sexy, to the point of where people are still cosplaying and doing different spoofs on the Jessica Rabbit character, and it's really only a side character in a movie that's filled with characters. So that kind of shows how strong her character was. And how much she actually ended up becoming a very beloved character because of the fact that she was faithful and she really did love Roger. She wasn't. I do think, that you might be onto something, that they were definitely trying to set it up as a red herring. They were trying to make you think that she had something to do with it, but in the end, she really didn't. Again, going back to how clever and how good the writing was and how tight it was.
Absolutely, and I love. Oh,
Sorry. What I was going to say, too, is that, with it being super tight as far as the writing goes, the only really, loose end that I even thought about was the fact that there is potentially, another Jessica Rabbit, just like a crazed, over-the-top version of her. And that's what Hoskins runs into in the apartment building, thinking that he tracked down Jessica Rabbit, and it's a completely different person.
You mean Helena?
So, yeah. But I just think that's the only kind of... Because they don't do anything with that. They don't do any kind of, resolution with it. It's not something where, that might be what Hoskins keeps seeing. Maybe that's who actually did something. So, I don't know. That was the only thing. But I also think there's so much character growth in such a little amount of time that we see Hoskins grow... We see his whole arc in there, and then we even see Jessica Rabbit, the line where, he just makes me laugh. It's such a genuine way of how that relationship would be, to where, Roger is the only one that can make this basic goddess in this town laugh, and that's why she loves him so much.
And I want to say this. I think what showed me that they knew exactly what they were doing with Jessica is they got Kathleen Turner to be the voice of Jessica, and man, did she not nail it right out of the park. I mean, she got the sultry, but at the same time, it definitely felt like a 40s. I know this is kind of a passé term now, but a 40s dame. Like she really pulled off that kind of ambiguous. I could go either way type thing, and she just nailed it right out of the park on that. And I want to kind of go back to Bob Hoskins for a bit, because first off, obviously this movie is what I came to know Bob Hoskins for, and then later on Super Mario Brothers. Don't hate me. But the thing is that when I started to really watch films, and especially British gangster films, I came across Bob Hoskins in a totally different way. And it just blew my mind that I didn't know this side of Bob Hoskins. Please tell me that y'all have seen his British gangster movies. Please tell me that. I mean,
I
haven't seen all of them, but I've seen, a bunch of his British stuff. It's funny hearing him speak in his native tongue, because he has such a thick accent.
Well, the thing is that if you are watching the movie with headphones, you can tell when they ADR him. There are a lot of scenes where they didn't take the audio of him on scene. They recorded over it, and I have a strange feeling it was because that thick accent just kept coming out all the time. But there is the movie that I specifically want to call up especially for this particular film is Mona Lisa, where he plays this kind of down on his luck guy that's protecting a prostitute. And all the aspects of that film, where, that kind of love-hate relationship that he develops through that film, especially towards the woman that he's kind of tasked to protecting, you see that stuff in how he relates to Roger, how he relates to Jessica. He takes that and he really develops it. And I love how he makes this character, which could have just been an easy, down on his luck bum detective, and he gives him so much depth and so much complexity. Like, yes, he's a flawed man, but at the same time, he has this rich backstory, and he feels for things. And the thing, one thing I really love is how, he hates Toons, but it's not because he's racist. It's because of a deep pain that he hasn't gotten over yet. And with other people, you can tell it's I see myself as better than Toons. Toons are lesser. How RK Maroon, his how he basically is using Toons as kind of almost slave labor for movies to make he can make money off of, right? And he makes the big joke about Dumbo working for peanuts. I mean, if you obviously there's the pun joke on that, but if you think about it, this dude is basically how much is he paying his Toons? I don't think they're getting scale. Let's just put it that way. Which of course leads me to the wonder, is there an animated characters union? Please tell me that there's an animated characters union. I feel like that needs to be a thing in this universe.
It doesn't seem so if the judge can just go in and dip everybody.
Yeah, he doesn't have. They apparently don't even have rights to a free, impartial jury or anything. He basically
or a trial. Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, just death.
Okay,
and just for doing nothing, this little cute, adorable shoe that. I love this movie because it makes Christopher Lloyd into this terrible, terrible person. And when I remember watching this movie, and I think that I had seen, I'd seen Back to the Future, and he was Pagemaster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember those two movies and just being oh, he's just a lovable old guy. This guy is the mentor. There's nothing that he would steer me wrong in. And then I see him just destroy this little cute shoe that's like a little puppy. And it hurt. It hurt my heart a little bit, but I loved the movie for it.
I'll be honest here. Up until I was 16, I refused to acknowledge that Christopher Lloyd was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit because I had such a bond to Doc Brown. I could not see Doc Brown being a psychopathic murderer. That was really personal to me, and I don't know. Maybe it's just that just says something about me, I guess. But that really messed with me that Christopher Lloyd was capable of being both this kind of I don't want to say benevolent because there is a malevolence towards his other characters, but not overtly evil. And I gotta say, Christopher Lloyd shines just as much as Bob Hoskins in this movie, and he is kind of tasked the same way that Bob Hoskins is with having to. Most of the performers that he's working with are animated. He doesn't really get a whole lot of scenes with other human beings. And yet he just plays it. And I'm curious as to what you think about how each actor tackles that particular role. Because Hoskins plays it one way, Lloyd plays it a different way. I mean, which do you think one did it better than the other, or do you think that they both kind of found some sort of unique element to their character on this?
I think they both brought something really good to the table. I think that Bob Hoskins was just so good as the everyman, and you had Christopher Lloyd, who is just a tremendous actor. I think more recently he's gotten acclaim, but I think for the longest time people didn't really appreciate the range that the guy had. There was a movie from 2016, just going slightly off here, called I Am Not a Serial Killer.
I was about to bring that up, yes.
Yeah. And again, him playing you're not sure. Like, is he good? Is he evil? And he does, and it's really, really good. And again, showing just how good he is. Because in this, he's also very old. I think he's like well into his late 70s in this film. And so for him to be able to play such a dynamic, broad-ranged character as such an old person, it's really good. And it again shows just how much of a good actor he is.
What I love about how he plays Judge Doom is that, especially after you know what he really is at the end of the film, you go back and you watch that performance, and you could realize, no, he is, he is a cartoon psychopath who's trying his hardest to act like a human being, but he comes out at really weird times. Like, all those times he spasms out, that's him kind of losing control before he regains his composure. And Lloyd finds these ways of getting that out in ways that lets us know this dude there's something wrong about him. That there's something, he's really constrained, but then he has these weird freak out moments. And that just makes you kind of, it almost sets you up for that reveal. And I love how they drop hints about what's really happening. And if you haven't seen the film before, you're not going to realize those hints are there until the very end. How, especially like when they say that the judge spent millions of Samoans, or I think it's Samoans, and bought the election. And then we find out that millions of Samoans were robbed from the bank when Eddie and his brother got the drop on them, or had a piano dropped on them. If you weren't, if you were really paying attention or really thinking about this as kind of a mystery, maybe you would have connected it. But because it's in this kind of animated, goofy comedy, you're not really paying attention to that, to that information drop. And then, of course, you have like the way that the judge makes sure that he keeps his body fully away from the dip at all times. Even when he drops the shoe in, he makes sure that he is as far away from it as possible. And you're thinking to yourself, that's just because, this really stinky vial of sludge. But, even though he, this is his own concoction, his own creation, he should know if this thing is safe for him or not. And yet he still treats it as something that could hurt him. You're not paying attention to those types of things because you don't have enough information at that time to know what's going on. And again, watching
it again with knowing all the details about everything and picking up on that little stuff was fantastic for me. Like seeing him use that glove and being like, oh, so there's more to it, because he, like what you said, the most noticeable thing for me was him avoiding the dip as much as possible, right? Mm-hmm. And showing those little hints. And I really liked how they slow played the reveal a little bit to where Christopher Lloyd is that red eye, high pitched, crazy person that killed his brother. So I really, really liked that. I wanted to touch on something that Cecil just said. Christopher Lloyd was only like 46 or 47 when he made this movie. Mm-hmm. So it's funny to me though, because I always think of him as an old man. So even in this movie, like Pagemaster, like Doc Brown, all that, I always thought he was way older, but he's only like 81 right now. And he's still acting and kicking ass. And I thought he's been the same age, same 70, 75 forever. And I did not understand that until like I was looking something up as far as one of his, you guys were talking about that movie. I'm
Not Your Serial Killer.
Yeah. Because I was trying to figure out the other movies that I've seen him in that are darker, right? Because I only remember the lighter ones and then this one. So it was really cool. And then, the fact that like watching this again and picking up on those little pieces in there to like get the bigger mystery about it and get that resolution for Hoskins' character, it was fantastic and made it even hit more for that ending.
And I'm gonna say a part of from what I understand, Christopher Lloyd up till I want to say like the mid 2000s, he was very careful as to what kind of projects he did because he knew that kids loved Doc Brown, And so he kind of tailored his career to kind of be child friendly for the most part. I mean, hell, he even came back to do the Back to the Future animated show that happened like 1992. So he was very conscious about how his family branding was, which I guess is interesting considering Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but I don't think he was really paying attention to it at that particular point. But he has such a wide range. I mean, like for me, I also remember him from Taxi playing Reverend Jim. If you haven't seen Taxi, you got to see that show. He's incredible in it. He has such a wide range, and he just did not get as much appreciation, primarily because I think that he kind of typecasted himself for a little bit. But what do you think? Do you think he kind of typecasted him, Cecil, or do you, or what do you think?
Oh, I was just gonna say how Christopher Lloyd is one of those guys that has like Carol O'Connor syndrome. It's that they're famous for a role that they did playing an older guy, but they're really not that old. Like Carol O'Connor was doing Archie Bunker when he was in his 40s, and he just, you looked at him then, you thought he was like 60, 70 or whatever, and really he wasn't that old. And same thing with Christopher Lloyd. He was Doc Brown, and it's like, no, he really wasn't that old at the time. He just looked older. And now now he really looks old because, he's in his 80s, but he, for the longest time, kind of looked the same, really. And it's always funny.
Yeah, I always thought, like, when I saw Back to the Future, I always thought he was old. And I always had that image. Like, I thought maybe that's one of the reasons why he was dressed the way that he was as far as his costume for Roger Rabbit. Because I thought that maybe he was too bold to have, like, hair again or something. It's so crazy that he's had that same face and that same mannerisms, and he, to Cecil's point, I can't think of another person that's fully like embraced kind of that old person or that older person, right? And saying, that's my typecast. You have the dumb rom-com typecast, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we're all kind of familiar with that, but for me, like, it's such an interesting thing to look back at it and then see where he's at now. He was like, oh, he's been 70 for the past 40 years.
Yeah. No, the thing is that he was always a comedic actor. I feel like he felt his range was mostly in slapstick comedy, and this primarily been what's been feeding him for the most part. Now he's kind of accepted the fact that he works well in kind of these weird oddball kind of but definitely more unusual characters. Like he kind of accepted that, and I think he's having a bit of fun with it too, if I'm being completely honest. But I also want to talk about Charles Fleischer right quick, because I feel like Charles Fleischer, he had possibly one of the most difficult roles in this movie. Not only did he voice Roger Rabbit, but he voiced like 4 other characters on top of that, including Benny the Cab, Herman the Baby, like 2 of the Weasels, and like one other minor character. And he had to find different voices for each of these, even though if you're really paying attention, you could pretty much tell a Charles Fleischer character. But are you familiar with Charles Fleischer's work? Cecil, I feel like you should know a little bit about him.
Well, I know him like a lot of his voice acting work, and I know he was also, excuse me, I'm adjusting my chair. I know he was also he was a stand-up comedian, and the thing that always drove me nuts about him was he was, now I'm not 100% on this, but I'm pretty well versed. If I remember correctly, they were trying desperately to move ahead with a Roger Rabbit 2. They really wanted to do it. And he had only signed on for one film. And he did not want to do another Roger Rabbit film because he was more interested in his stand-up career. He thought that was where everything was going to go. And he was afraid that if he continued to do the Roger Rabbit movies, that he would get typecast and then that would kind of ruin his career. And I've always kind of been annoyed at him for that, because now I know they're trying. They had announced that there is a Who Framed Roger Rabbit 2 coming out in 2022, I think. And I know they've been trying to do this for years, but it looks like this one's actually going to happen. And it makes me sad because now I think it's too late. Now it's just, Bob Hoskins is dead. Christopher Lloyd, they can't exactly have him come back to do the same character. What's her name? Kathleen Turner doesn't have that voice anymore. So granted, they can do a lot with animation, and I worry that now they're going to try to do it with they're going to try to do CGI with animation instead of doing that hand-drawn stuff.
Hold on, they used a lot of CG for this animation, like the opening.
Oh, I understand. No, I know, but I mean, there's a difference though. Is the thing is what I'm saying? Like, yes, there was a lot of CG. They had a lot of digital matte paintings and that sort of thing. But I'm talking like they're going to do more. In my humble opinion, I think what they're going to end up doing is it's going to be kind of Ready Player One with tunes in it, and I don't want that.
No, yeah, you want another Roger Rabbit or another Space Jam. You don't want 3D CGI, and you want it in that classic style, right? And I don't think you would want it even something like the new Looney Tunes animation isn't really that classic style that I think would fit a second Roger Rabbit movie. And I think that's what has me more nervous than anything else, that it's not going to be what we are looking for, and it's going to be something that the animation is just not going to be on par, and there's something that's going to look weird, and I'm just not going to like it.
Well,
I'm really sad about it.
Do you know what CalArt's style art is?
Yeah, unfortunately.
That I was just thinking, I'm like, could you imagine they try to throw in like that art style in with that beautiful old Looney Tunes, style of animation, and then they have that. I think if they did, though, there would be such a stark contrast that it would really stand out. You'd be like, okay, maybe you'd be able to convert some people to finally admit that art style stinks.
I think everyone accepts the fact that the CalArt style stinks. It's just that the audience that it's intended for are too young to really know better, and it makes me terribly sad that they're going to grow up nostalgic to this animation. That's the thing that really makes me sad when it comes to this, because that is so lazy.
That's that like Steven Universe style, right?
Yes.
But Steven Universe had one thing going for it, which was that it was original. Like when Teen Titans Go or Thundercats Roar or that to me is where CalArts really shows its butt. It just if you don't have something interesting to do with this, like if you don't have a story to make up for the lazy animation, it's gonna fall apart. And I feel like the same way with this too. Like if the script was basically just a cash grab to say, look at all these animated characters that we have on screen. I guess if it was more Justice League than Avengers, I feel like we wouldn't be talking about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I feel like that it would have bombed spectacularly, especially if it went with the darker tones and themes that it went with for the script. That's the balancing act when it comes to this. Like the animation style is definitely a draw for people to come in to see this movie, and I feel like in a way, Robert Zemeckis lives for these types of like little tricks. Like he wants you to come in for that, but he wants you to leave with a good story. Like you could say the same thing with like Back to the Future. Yeah, it has all the great visual effects, but if you think about his story, the story of Back to the Future is one that you don't even need the special effects to really appreciate. It's just the cherry on top. When you think of Forrest Gump, you're not, you're going to go see, this guy who's interacting with historical figures, but you're going to leave with feeling like you know a character like Forrest, and that you're going to care about Forrest as a character. So I think that's where Robert Zemeckis works his best as a director. You give him a unique technical challenge, but you also give him a good script that he can develop off of it. Because if you give him a bad script, welcome to Marwin. It's yeah, I'm sorry. It's just that he flounders. That's the thing that really kind of gets me about Zemeckis. It's like he is such a visionary director, but he also kind of, in some instances, doesn't have the best eye for scripts. And so, I feel like for every Contact, you're going to get a Christmas Carol out of it. Or, I like Beowulf. I know other people don't like Beowulf. I think Beowulf is pretty awesome. But other people would say otherwise.
I just think that, making movies is difficult, and you could have a script that's on the blacklist that is just, one of the best unsold scripts, and somebody gets it and they're like, yes, this is finally going to be made. And we've got this person directed and this person's producing it. And we've got this actor attached, and you have all this talent, and it comes together and it just sucks. And no one can figure out why it sucks. They're like, well, everybody's talented. Yeah. And the script was good. Yeah. And the effects were good. Like, why did it not work? And it happens. It's the weirdest thing. There's no exact science to it. If every movie, like if there was an exact science to it of, well, we need this, this, and this will happen, then we'd be getting nothing but nonstop great movies. But the bottom line is that stuff just happens, and it's really a crapshoot. Even something like this, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where they were going through all of this work to get all of these licenses and throw them all together in this one particular film. And there's a chance that it might not have worked, and it magically all came together and it did work. And unfortunately, going back to this again, they tried to do that for the modern age with Ready Player One, and I personally felt that it didn't work. That was one of my worst. I think I put it as the worst film of 2017 when it came, or 2018, whenever it came out. 2018,
just to clear the air, I actually made it one of my top 20 movies of 2018, and the reason why,
and that's fine. That's everybody has their own. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying for me personally, I just didn't like it.
Yeah, I'm saying that he's wrong.
Hey, go for it.
That book had so much potential to be on screen, and it was just bad, and I'm so upset about it.
I will make it. This will be like a separate episode, I feel, where I'll go into reasons why I think Ready Player One actually works. But it's one of those that I can understand why people don't like it. It's one of those look, I could give you I can kind of maybe change your perspective a bit, but at the same time, I'm also going to respect the fact that this is a movie that requires that you kind of see it the way it wants you to see it, and if you don't want to see it that way, you're not going to appreciate it. But getting back to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which I feel like whether you like the film or not, you cannot say that this is a bad movie. Like, I can honestly say that the script does everything that it needs to do, everything that is required of it. The acting is on point. That every actor comes in. You do not have one lazy performance. Even down to the bums at the bar, all of them are putting out great acting. You have top-notch animation that that makes you believe that these characters enact the same environment as live action. And as we mentioned with Cool World, that is fucking hard. That is hard. And even now, I mean, yeah, we it has to be said, 30 years we've been with animated characters. We have fully CG created characters like Gollum, who have become, immortal characters in cinema. All of this came from the stuff that was developed specifically for this film. And understand this is not the first time that we saw animation and live action together. For that, we go back to Gene Kelly dancing with Jerry the Mouse, or that cat that Paula Abdul was dancing with in her music video. Yeah, I forgot the name of the song. My girlfriend would know.
MC Scat Cat.
There you go. Yes, but you see what I'm saying though? Like for this film, not only did it have to feel like they're in the same environment, but they have to feel like they're in the same story. Which again, like with Cool World, the animation didn't match the story that it was going for, and there's a whole lot of issues that happen with that. And Ralph Bakshi, I want to say partially he dug his own grave on that one, but at the same time he had things taken away from him, and was not able to kind of put the movie together that he wanted to. And I gotta say that
Bakshi. No, I was just gonna say Bakshi was pushing, like, he originally signed on and they were like, okay, you can make an R-rated film, and he was like, okay, good. And then he got working in it and they're like, no, it can't be R-rated. And so he kept trying to push the envelope and they kept pulling it back.
Yeah. And how much do you want to bet that some of that had to be because of Roger Rabbit? Like they saw that there was a potential to make more money if they could get kids to go see this, and especially if they could tie it in with marketing and maybe get some toys, get the video games. I remember the Super Nintendo video game. Oof, that was bad.
Was it hard?
Yeah, it was a stinker. But yeah, the thing is that Roger Rabbit, I feel like that there's a lot of things that Roger Rabbit kind of created in its wake. Not only were we able to get full animated characters along with live action, but at the same time it was able to develop a unique way of doing practical effects that could be tied in with hand-drawn animation, which of course would only be a step next to computer-generated animation, which of course, especially since Spielberg was also foreseeing this, 5 years later he's going to go on to do Jurassic Park. And you can't tell me that part of that, that he wasn't kind of thinking about what he learned on Roger Rabbit as he was doing Jurassic Park. Because of just the wild ideas that were going on. And on top of that, one thing that I got to say about the connection to this is one of the producers of Roger Rabbit is Don Hahn. Now, anyone who knows their Disney, they know who Don Hahn is. He is the guy. He is the man that started the Disney Renaissance. He was the guy that produced Little Mermaid all the way up to, I think he died at Lion King, and after that, I guess you could almost tell why the Renaissance kind of started to peter out at that particular point. But he was the one that was behind all of that, and I feel like the stuff that was learned on Roger Rabbit, how, especially when it comes to the animation style and how you can, especially that opening, the Roger Rabbit short, the way that they successfully merged the CG and the digital matting along with the cel shaded. Like a lot of that stuff you will see in Rescuers Down Under, which I believe is the next film that happens. And then you'll see it in The Little Mermaid. And you'll see it again with Beauty and the Beast. Like all of that stuff. And another thing that I don't think gets a lot of appreciation, that sequence dress that Jessica wears during her song number, that's CG. That is not hand-drawn animation. But they matched it not only to her animation style, but also to the live action. And that is amazing, especially the way it shimmers in the shots. Like that is, I mean, if you look at it from the perspective that this is stuff that's never really been done before, this is extremely impressive, or at least I thought it was impressive.
Watching this back after like years and years of watching movies and seeing CGI done poorly and done well, and still like watching this movie and being just amazed at how well they were able to incorporate some of those practical effects in there. Like there's a scene where Roger is crying in the alley and the box below him still moves around a little bit, and it's seamless just about. And then even like it was, I think, the hammer with the punch with the fist in there with the retractable fist.
Yeah.
Even something like that, just the way that they do quick edits and make it to where they're able to get those shots in there and you have that believable world around you. And Hoskins' interaction, we talked a little bit about it earlier as far as what Hoskins and what Lloyd brought into the movie. I thought his interactions with the actual characters and making them look physical and because he has the most interaction with the actual tunes, right?
Yeah.
And that was still believable to me. And it's amazing to me after it being 2020 and this movie that was made in the 80s is still better effects-wise than a lot of the other stuff that's out there. Even like what you're talking about with Jessica Rabbit's dress, that's such an understated piece of CGI that is just perfectly done and just so well executed. And then I would say that you're right. You know, Spielberg took that, and that's why Jurassic Park is so beloved, because everything looks real and tangible and the textures are all there. So that world is fully realized and fully believed in.
The scene that got me, the one that made me really impressed by how the animation and the live action really worked, is actually a very small scene. And it's a scene where Roger accidentally sits in Eddie's brother's chair. And how he puts his hand on the back of the chair and like he's going to push it in to sit. And then Eddie screams at him, get out of that chair. And then he takes his hand off and there's fingerprints on the chair because of the dirt, because they set up that Eddie hasn't touched that desk since his brother died, and so it has all this dust on it. And the fingerprints were the thing that, like, that was me really realizing just how impressive. And it was probably a very easy, or maybe not easy at the time, but something that you could kind of see being easy to do later. But that was where where you felt that the animation made an impact, it made an impression on the on the live action stuff. But did you have a moment like that, Cecil?
Really, the big thing with me with the film was just the interactions between Judge Doom and the characters. That always freaked me out. Like you were saying earlier, how you could see him occasionally was just freaking out, and that was the evil in him that was just trying to get out. He was so sick of trying to act normal, and he really wasn't. So his performance always really stood out to me. A lot of the animation is just beautiful. I unfortunately hadn't had a chance to watch it again before we talked about it, so I'm going just off of memory here. But I think that from what I remember, I mean, I've seen it numerous times, and it's a beautiful movie, and it's sad that we've gotten so far away from animation, even if, yes, it is using animation with CG, but it's using it in such a way that it's seamless. And now we're getting this influx of Disney movies that are full CG. And I think that something like Frozen, it's like impressive at the time, but it doesn't stand the test of time. If you look at it years later, it's like, it just doesn't have that wow factor. Whereas if you go back and you watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit now, it still looks really good and it's still really impressive.
Well,
I'm sorry, we did Toy Story, the original Toy Story, not too long ago, and we talked about how the CGI just really isn't up to snuff with nowadays. But I still feel like Roger Rabbit's animation in the way that world is built is still very seamless. Even something like the I forget his name, but the baby, the 50-year-old man with a 3-month 3-month little piece in there.
Yes,
that line still kills me. Yeah, but even that, when he's visiting Hoskins' character at his office, and he's in a baby crib, he's in the stroller, like that's so cool. And then the interaction with the he calls her a dame or a broad or something.
Doll.
That's what it is. But it's just done so well that it's amazing to me that this was done in 86, 87, and we're looking at all this different animation nowadays, where I think Cecil is right. If we look back at this stuff, and we see it even with Toy Story, where the animation it's not as fully lived in and believable.
All right, so I wanted to bring up a couple of instances. I told you how Disney and Warner Brothers were extremely strict as to how their characters would be portrayed, especially if they're in the same shot with one another. There's 2 scenes where you'll see a Disney and Warner Brothers character interacting, and that's the dueling pianos at the Ink and Paint Club, and then Mickey and Donald skydiving, right? If you'll notice,
Mickey and Bugs.
Mickey and Bugs Bunny skydiving. Here's something that you probably, if you watch the movie again, you're going to notice 2 things. Number 1, they literally have the same amount of lines, down to the word. 2, one will never be above the other one. They have to be symmetrical. So if one character ducks, the other character ducks. Like even with Mickey and Minnie, they're at the same elevation. One does not get higher or lower than the other. And those were stipulations specifically, and especially at the end. You know, when you have Porky that says, "That's all, folks," and then all of a sudden you see Tinkerbell. Again, if you ever see a Warner Brothers character, a Disney character has to be there. Well, there's the only exception was Dumbo, and that was the only, I believe that there was one Warner Brothers character that got it was the Tweety. Tweety was the kind of the thing for Dumbo. Although I have to also admit, I love the fact that when R.K. Maroon, at the beginning of the film, when R.K. Maroon is talking to Valiant, he mentions that he got Dumbo and half of the cast of Fantasia. And if you notice throughout the entire scene, you see Dumbo and you see the cast of Fantasia. That's all you see. Like I even down to like the imps of the Night on Witch Mountain, which I would just like, if you watch Fantasia, you'll catch all the little in jokes on that. But I again, that was that level of detail that I just admire about this film. And I think part of it is that everyone cared. Like you got the sense that everyone knew that that they had to put in their A game to make this a special movie, and that it was that they kind of expected that this was going to be something that people are going to remember. And I gotta admit, I'm so thankful that they took this seriously. And I feel like when we're talking about animation now, especially CG animation, like my daughter, she will watch she'll watch like the Disney animation and the Pixar animation. Pixar, I feel like you can't really say, because I think Pixar's on a whole different level. I think that they kind of have their own little thing. But like how Disney, DreamWorks, and like Sony Animation, you get the sense that they're not really thinking about innovation. They are putting out a product that they kind of expect an immediate return on investment. Like whenever I think about what animation studios that are doing it right, I got to go back to Laika. Laika Studios, in my opinion, is the studio that is, like, you get the sense that this is what animation should be. And it always pisses me off when no one goes to see their movies. It's like, I want to see more Leica films, but I'm always scared that they're gonna run out of funding and that they'll never be able to make another movie. And especially, I right now, just please make another Leica movie, please. That's all I'm asking. Someone step in, give them some financing.
Well, don't wish for that too much. You'll get somebody to come in, buy them out, and then just put them on their products.
You mean like Disney?
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, I wasn't going to say like Disney, but yeah, like Disney. Disney, yeah, but and then they'll just be making Disney Channel Mickey Mouse TV shows that are just the worst thing ever. But
yeah, because the nice thing with Leica is that not only is the animation just beautiful and fantastic and all the artistic pursuits that they're doing, but their stories are still really solid as well. You don't want that to be diluted and still have like pretty things to look at. You want that different layer, and the reason why Leica is so critically acclaimed with everything, despite apparently not making a dime from anything, which is just really sad.
I actually like whenever the new Leica movie comes out, and then I give it a glowing review because there's not one Leica movie that I hate. The thing I do with every time that a Leica movie comes out is I beg people, please just go see this movie, please just go see this movie, just give this a shot, please. And then I see the box office results, and I know that my cries have gone unanswered. But but the thing is like, when it comes to CG animation, I think that it's become so saturated, and we have so much of it, that I don't think anyone like people don't care. It's like, okay, we've seen a CG animation before. I mean, yeah, it's a different character, but it's the same style pretty much over and over and over again. But anyway,
it's tiresome. I was just gonna say it's tiresome. It's all becoming this bland, like slurry. It's like, oh, good, another one that looks exactly the same, and it's there's no uniqueness to it. And it's sad that they have essentially infinite money. Like, they really can take some chances, and yet they don't.
I know. Even Pixar at this particular point is becoming more safe. Although I say that before Soul comes out, and I feel like if there's a movie that could actually, mix things up a bit, Soul could be that movie. But outside of that,
the problem, I was just gonna say, the problem was Brave really screwed them over. They wanted, they fought to do Brave. They wanted to do something really unique, and they made that film, and Brave bombed horribly. And then that's why they had to do Cars 2 and Cars 3. And they kind of it was basically a stipulation of, well, if this flops, you got to do this crap. And so consequently, Brave really bombed. And so they had to do, nothing but a cavalcade of sequels after that.
The thing is that, like, then they make Inside Out, which was which was the best film of 2015 for me. With that and Anomalisa, but which is interesting. 2 animated films made my list that year. But the thing is that Inside Out, there's very limited sequel appeal, and I feel like Pixar makes all of their movies now with the idea of, but can we make a sequel from it? Like, and maybe it's not Pixar. I think maybe that may be a Disney thing. Like the way that they could get away with doing something original and not doing yet another sequel because Disney is that they have to say, okay, well, there's marketability. We create a new IP that people can get that we can make another sequel off of, and so that like Onward, you could tell Onward was made specifically with the idea that they could make another Onward movie, and I feel like that hurt that. But kind of getting off the subject here, I got to ask a question though. Was there any scene, either as a child or now, in Who Framed Roger Rabbit that freaked you out? Like, truly, like, disturbed you?
Just the, when I killed your brother, yeah, just like this,
that scene.
I think that pretty much freaked out everybody, because with the way the eyes were and the animation, everything, it was so perfect. It was intentionally scary, and it worked. And I think it gave a lot of people I think it gave a lot of adults nightmares.
From the moment that the judge goes under the steamroller, again, who thinks about using a steamroller but a cartoon? Like, seriously, that should have been like the last. Again, if you were taking this like any like true film noir, that should have been a huge hint as to who the judge is. Yet you don't even think about it until after he goes under it, and then comes out on the other side of basically a piece of paper. Like, and that, oh my god, that scene freaked me out. Like, just him like getting up like that, and then airing himself out, and then the eyes pop out. Like, I remember as a kid, I went running. Like, I couldn't even watch this. And that's part of the reason why I couldn't associate this with Christopher Lloyd, because I refuse to think that creature could have been my beloved Doc Brown. Like, could not do it. But Chris, did you have a scene like that?
I mean, that one for sure, but honestly, I'll go back to the shoe scene where you just see him straight murder a tune with no sense of remorse, no sense of anything. And like I said, I mean, that's when I was totally bought into this dude being just evil, just like mean. And watching it even the second time as an adult, it's such like a harrowing and intimidating act to do that in front of just people that all accept it too. And no one said anything. No one could say anything because he is judge and jury, and he has a license to kill. He has a license to murder. He has, that autonomy in there, and it's such, man, that's such a rough thing to watch and witness.
Citizens. They don't have rights as Americans. They, you could say that this film is actually tackling racism. Like how we're not talking about like the idea of we're not looking at racism in the sense of it being like a civil rights thing. We're looking at it from a passive racism, like this kind of that human beings see themselves as superior, and that that there's no care whatsoever towards tunes, like how they beat themselves up for our entertainment. They to the point where they, you drop a refrigerator in the head, and the director is more worried about the refrigerator. Like, it's very subtle in how I guess maybe not so subtle, but because we're so okay, because we as audiences, it expects the audience to have seen cartoons before. If this is the first time that you've seen like this style of animation, or if you haven't seen a Looney Tune, or if you haven't seen one of the wackier Disney shows, or any of the anything that has that kind of animated comedy, you're probably going to be disturbed by this. But it is expecting the audience to have been familiar with it and to be okay with it. And in a way, it's almost judging an audience to an extent, because when the director gets pissed off at Roger for not having stars, there's no real concern for him. They pay their actors peanuts. They have to be, an animated cab is not allowed to operate in Los Angeles proper without getting picked up by the Toon Patrol. All of this stuff is acceptable, and there's a scene that went back to Chinatown, again kind of calling back on old noir, where there's this sense that anything can happen in Toontown, no one's gonna care. As long as it happens to a tune. It's when a tune attacks a human being. When a human being is assaulted, that's when we care at that particular point, right?
Yeah. It was a unique angle for them to take, and kind of ballsy, really, because it showed how there was this power structure and how the tunes really didn't have any control, how they weren't really allowed to have a proper life beyond work. It kind of made you really sad for them, and it was neat. I mean, it was heavy for something that you at first glance you would think it's a kids movie, and granted, a lot of kids see it and enjoy it, but I don't think you really take in the themes until you get older.
And how
right.
And how many of y'all caught the freeway jokes about the traffic jams will be the thing of the past? How Judge Doom sees a future of gas stations, mini malls, all across the eye could see. My God, it'll be glorious. Like, I didn't really appreciate the comedy, it's all in the delivery. He delivered the one thing I got to give the live action cast is
in an interview this week with
hold on.
Bowling from Sinclair Broadcasting, Donald Trump
I can't believe that happened.
was once again asked for the second time.
Whoops.
Your echo is going off.
Yeah, it is. All right. Hold on. I'm gonna so that I can see it when I edit. Okay. All right. So at this particular point, so we're getting kind of close to the end. We did talk about the fact that they are talking about perhaps maybe making a sequel to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, or maybe some sort of like soft reboot or something. Is there any way, shape, or way or form that you could see that being something that could be interesting, or do you think that there might be like a spiritual successor, something that you think either kind of is in the same realm as Who Framed Roger Rabbit, or perhaps something that might have even done it better?
No, and I'm very much against a sequel or a remake. I think that it's too long. There's too much distance between them, and honestly, every single late sequel that I've seen has been terrible. So I really I think that they're at the point now where they can't do it. They're going to spend a lot of money doing it, and it'll probably end up making a lot of money. But I personally, I don't want it.
I don't see what story they have to tell. And if they're going to do another murder mystery, I mean, that I guess that's cool, but they have to keep the aesthetic, right? Or they have to go and pull from a different style. So maybe it's sci-fi, or maybe it's a creature feature, or something. But I think the film noir style just complemented everything so well to where you can bring in that dark grittiness with these bright colors, right? It contrasted so well, and it made it to where it layers it up a little bit, it keeps it flowing, and you're able to see both sides of this world, where there is definitely like an underbelly to the bright sunshine and rainbows. So unless they're going to do another just redo of this movie, which it doesn't need to be redone, so there's no real point. I don't see it being anywhere as good as this. I don't see a direction for them to go.
There is one aspect that I think would be kind of interesting, but the thing is, I don't trust Disney at this particular point, because This would require, honestly, I would love to see them actually tackle more of this kind of second-class citizenship of toons, like to kind of see, you know, like how can toons in this universe kind of be seen as equals to their human counterparts. I think that would be a very interesting aspect, that they could find a story that could work on that. But the thing is, Disney is not going to do that. The closest that they ever got to being this topical about the issue was Zootopia. And even then, they kiddified it to the point where, you know, it only barely had edges to it, and not even that deep of an edge. Again, I love Zootopia, but yeah, I don't trust Disney to give it the weight and complexity that it requires. And you know that they're going to want this tied to the Disney brand. They're not going to make this what we'll call like a Hulu type show. But so yeah, honestly, I don't trust Disney to do this. But I do see that if someone could kind of create a spiritual successor, you know, use something that isn't exactly like this, but kind of tackles the same issue, I would definitely give it a shot. Maybe as like a comic book or something.
Well, do you also see a potential for the studios to work together again?
Always.
Where you have to bring those characters back, right? You can't just leave out Bugs Bunny and only have Mickey Mouse, right?
Honestly, if they do that, they're going to have to bring it up to at least the 60s or 70s. Although, you know what would be cool? Bring it up to the 80s and make Saturday morning cartoons a part of this. You know, have like, you know, He-Man, Jim and the Holograms, G.I. Joe, Transformers. You know, bring them into this. You know, maybe have it be a class warfare between the old cinematic guard and the new TV people. You know, there is something you could do with that, but again, I don't know what the story could be, and I don't expect Disney to give it the weight that it requires. They're just too interested in only making money. It takes an act of God in order to allow Pixar to be able to put anything even emotionally challenging to its audience. You know, I seriously doubt that Disney would have allowed Coco to happen if it weren't for the fact that Pixar basically said, look, we make you billions of dollars. You're going to give us this one. But
so to put it in perspective real quick, as far as like what we're talking about, just so you have an idea of what the storyline they want to go with, is they want to go with a prequel and have Roger Rabbit's human parents tell him he's a toon instead of a real person, so he has human parents.
I'm out.
And then
I'm out.
You're right. Right. And then Roger Rabbit must find his real parents. So he goes to LA, finds a girl named Jessica, and then he gets sent to the military to fight against Nazis.
Okay.
So yeah.
I think we'll go ahead and just drop the refrigerator on my head at this point. Oh my god, that sounds so bad. Please, Disney, do not do this. Do not do this, okay? I promise I will go see whatever schlockfest you have coming up, as long as you promise me that this is going on ice. Like, no.
I could see, like, I mean, because there's been a lot of really bad ideas that have come across, and then for whatever reason or other, they got scrapped. And I hope that this is one that just they come to the realization, yeah, you know what, maybe we shouldn't do this. But they seem hell-bent on remaking all their animated stuff and doing, like, just sequels out the, So I don't know. I mean, it seems like they're going with a lot of safe bets, especially with COVID right now, because they lost a lot of money because movies aren't making money right now. And this is this is when they're supposed to be making billions. And so they're losing a ton of money. So I could see them really hedging their bets and just going with some really, really safe films for the next couple of years.
I'll even go to Toy
like
Story
that.
5. Just don't make that movie. Please.
Well, And to Cecil's point, I mean, you had Mulan, which was set up to make legitimately possibly billions of dollars with the international market and the American market. You know, they got to be hurting. They got to be looking at everything and figuring out what they can do as far as cash cows and quick cash cows, too. Mm-hmm. Something that they can do production of very quickly, get it out in the theaters once they fully open up, and get it rock and rolling. I think that we're going to see so many things switch up as far as everything for them to say, okay, well, whatever's out now, that's fine, or whatever's in post-production, that's fine, but we need to ramp up on all the great moneymakers that are we know that everybody knows us for the franchises. You know, they got to be looking at an overall, and it's crazy because they have all the money to begin with. Why do they need more? It doesn't make any sense.
Because their operation bleeds money as much as they make it. That's like the whole theme park thing. The theme parks cost millions of dollars for every day that it's not open. They need quick cash flow, and they will probably, like, all the safeguards that last under Lasseter, where, you know, the sequels, the direct-to-video sequels that he basically stopped. All of those are going to come back because they need that money fast. We're going to see some pretty low effort productions, and I would not be surprised if Roger Rabbit were that, because they, especially like Disney Plus, they need this stuff on Disney Plus ASAP, and they need this stuff in theaters ASAP. Expect direct to theater, direct to video coming pretty quickly. But at this particular point, is there anything about Who Framed Roger Rabbit that we didn't tackle, or that we need that you want to bring up before we get into Geek Sheet?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Yeah, just Hoskins' hairy back. That's about it.
That dude is a bear. I'll just put it that way. And no doubt obviously he played a dwarf in that Snow White and the Huntsman movie. That was his last role.
Yeah, it's really, really disappointing, isn't it?
He was good in it. There's at least that. I mean, you barely recognized that it was him, but at least he was good in it.
Could you imagine all that hair actually in that old school Wolverine costume? It would have been perfect.
Honestly, I would have loved to have seen him play Beast, if I'm being honest. But, all right, so let's get into Geek Sheet right quick. So I got to mention the fact that, again, when you talk about Bob Hoskins, you're probably not going to think of him in his gangster roles, but I got to say, if you haven't seen Mona Lisa or The Long Good Friday, you got to see these two movies. They are so good, especially The Long Good Friday, because in my opinion, he should have gotten an Oscar nomination for that, especially that last shot. The final shot in Long Good Friday is some of the best acting Bob Hoskins has ever done, and I'm not even going to spoil it. It's you got to see this on your own. When it comes to his genre work, he's done quite a bit. Obviously, the notorious Super Mario Brothers movie that I will say I have seen in theaters twice. And one that I have to admit I really like. I don't know if y'all seen Unleashed? Jet Li.
Yeah.
Really
I didn't
good.
know he was in that. That's funny.
Yeah, he was.
Or I don't remember.
He was Danny's quote unquote owner.
Okay.
Yeah, it was originally Danny the dog,
Yeah.
and then they renamed it to Unleashed for the U.S. audience.
Yeah. Okay, so the fun fact for Bob Hoskins, the only roles that I remember seeing him in, Unleashed is definitely one of those, but I completely forgot about it, so I'm not counting that one. So Roger Rabbit, right? Mm-hmm. The one that you just mentioned, what was
Super
that?
Mario Brothers?
Super Mario.
Brothers, and then one of my favorite of all time movies, Stay. He's yeah, and it's hilarious to me for you to say, oh, you should have seen him in all these old school gangster movies, because I've never seen him in any of those. I've never seen him act tough. outside of Roger Rabbit, and I feel so bad now. Like
right, well-
I should give him way more credence, but I've only
Long
seen
Good
him.
Friday is going on the list. I gotta show you Long Good Friday because I'm telling you right now, Tour de Force. You've got to see this scene. The final scene is mwah. It's yes, got to go there. All right, Christopher Lloyd. We talked a lot about him. I got to mention he was Uncle Fester in the underrated Addams Family movies. I love Addams Family and Addams Family Values, and Christopher Lloyd just nails both movies. And if anyone says anything bad about Addams Family, I'll meet you in the parking lot outside. Yeah, I love this. Also, please tell me that one of you loves Clue. I feel like this is a movie.
Clue is great.
I absolutely love him in Clue. I love everyone in Clue, but
Yeah, Clue is just one of those just stacked casts. That rarity of okay, here we got this movie. It's going to be based on a board game, so there's really no story there to begin with. But they made one, and they had all these amazing actors, and they pulled it off. And they had the 3 different endings, and it just it was such a cool movie. I've always really enjoyed Clue.
But yeah, so I didn't mention Dennis the Menace, which he was the bad guy in that one, but I don't know, just yeah, yeah. Anyway, Robert Zemeckis, Back to the Future, Contact Forrest Gump, Beowulf, Flight. I feel like that one kind of gets lost. Like that's one of those that didn't have the big CG effects, but I absolutely loved, especially Denzel Washington's performance in that movie. Have either of you seen Flight by any chance?
Yeah.
No, it's the one where he was the alcoholic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never. I saw the trailer for it. I never actually saw the movie.
It's pretty solid. It's pretty solid.
It's a great performance, great movie. It actually had me really like. You think it's one type of movie? It's not. It's a completely different movie. But I got to talk about some of the behind-the-scenes guys. Dean Cundey, the great cinematographer of the 80s. We're talking Back to the Future, obviously, but we're also talking about The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. He was also the cinematographer for Halloween, which is an episode we had a couple of years ago, Jurassic Park, as well as Apollo 13. I absolutely love Dean Cundey's work, and it's looking like he's kind of coming back, or I don't know. It looks like he's been doing some stuff recently. Alan Silvestri, who made the most famous, one of the most famous themes of all time with Back to the Future, also worked on Forrest Gump and Contact as well. But of course, I think now most audiences know him as the guy who wrote the Avengers theme, which I have to admit, I didn't expect that one to be as memorable as it has become. I don't find it that memorable myself, but it seems like, you play it and most people know where it comes from, right?
Yep.
But
I'm racking my brains trying to think of it, and I can't.
Well, there you go. You just proved me wrong. I love it when it happens.
I think once you hear it, you're going to be like, oh, that's what it is.
More than likely, I think that was one of the ones that stood out. There were some of the other ones that weren't really all that memorable. I do think that if I heard it, I probably would recognize it. It's just not, popping into my head right now.
Yep.
I would hum it for you, but I'm afraid that Disney would copyright strike it. So, yeah.
They're sending you a cease and desist for thinking about it.
Let's just put it this way. I've actually had a run-in with Disney before, so I'm not looking forward to doing that again. They fight dirty. And kind of talking about Disney one last time. Obviously, when you have Steven Spielberg, you also have Kathleen Kennedy, who was his main producer, and obviously she is the head of Lucasfilm. As of right now, I don't know exactly how much longer she'll have that job considering everything going on right now, but I'll be honest here. As a producer, Kathleen Kennedy just nailed the 80s and 90s. All the way up until the Bourne movie, she was really good. She was really good at that. Again, it's debatable whether you could say the same about her involvement in Star Wars, but yeah.
Is it debatable? Is it?
Look, you can fight the internet comments, okay? I'm not fighting that fight anymore. But at this
I think
point,
she may have not have been the best choice.
No.
Unfortunately.
I'm already
Yeah.
on record for saying that, so I'll go and say that no, she wasn't the right choice. I understand why, but no, she was not the right choice for that. All right, so that said, Chris, Cecil, do you agree with the critics and audiences on Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Do you give it a pass? Do you give it a fail? Or do you give it a maybe? Cecil.
Yeah, I give it a pass. I give it, the highest possible pass. It's just a movie that withstands the test of time. It looks great. It's funny. It's got a really clever script, and I'm glad that it did so well because it's a movie that deserved to do well. There's a lot of movies that come along that are good that just get overlooked, and this was one that thankfully got the praise and the money to back it up.
Chris.
I agree with Cecil. Yeah, it's a definite pass, and the fact that you can watch this so many years later, 30 years later, almost 40 years later, is just ridiculous that it still holds up. And the story is great, the editing is fantastic, the characters are beautiful and interesting, and it sucks you into the world just right out of the gate. That first little short, I always thought it was almost like what is that? Just like an unbraked shot.
A tracking shot?
A tracking shot, yeah, but like an unedited. Oh man, I'm trying. I just saw a whole YouTube video of it, where it's uncut, where it's just like fully on.
Steadicam?
Sure, Steadicam works. Whatever 1917 got, the whole ridiculous
that's a
one
long
shot.
take.
Yeah.
Long take.
The one take. That's what I'm. Jesus, I know what words are. I apparently can't say them. So for me, it was really cool because if you were to have done that like live as a one take unbroken shot, that's what got me into that whole world, because then you see the actors behind it, and I was just like, oh, they've done this a couple different times, but they do it as an unbroken shot every single time. And it's just really cool that for me to see that and then go into the whole world and be fully sucked in within just that little 4 or 5 minutes. It's perfect. It's phenomenal.
And I'm going to make this 3 for 3 because, first off, you can watch this movie not really analyzing it, and you will have a good time. This is a fun movie to watch. That said, though, if you're looking for something with more depth, with more insight, there is a lot here to unpack. This thing has got depths that you just don't see coming from kind of the way that this film is marketed and advertised. And I got to say that it's because it's got a great script. Robert Zemeckis' direction is on point, and you can tell that everyone that's involved in this movie is bringing their A game, and they all you feel that there's so much care being put into this movie, from the Chuck Jones animation to the Mel Blanc doing the voices. It's just a perfect storm of creative ideas all being put together to service a really interesting story. And the acting is amazing, the direction is amazing, the cinematography is amazing, the score is amazing. This is just a great movie. And if you have not seen it yet, first off, why did you even listen to a podcast? You know we spoiled this stuff. But if it's been a while and you need to revisit it right away. It's on Disney Plus right now. Hopefully it'll be there for the next 200 years. If it isn't, Disney, you failed. You failed at everything. Just keep it there. Anyway, Cecil, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Good Bad Flicks on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and I also do a podcast on 1201beyond.com called Radiodrome.
Chris, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on my own podcast called Ambition Radio, where I interview people who have found some kind of balance between their life, family, career, and the pursuit of their passions, dreams, or hobbies. You can find me on the Facebooks, the Instagrams. I don't use Twitter, but I have something there. So it'll be Ambition Radio Podcast. I'm on all the things and all the places. So just hit me up. Let me share your story. And yeah, you can do that.
And if you're looking for more awesome episodes of Arthouse Legends podcast, you can definitely go onto our website, arthouselegends.libsyn.com. Get our full back catalog there, or you can go onto wherever you get your podcast. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You know where you get your podcast. You can also go onto our Facebook page if you want to join our awesome community, or you want to get more notifications. We're on Twitter at Arthouse Legends, or if you just want to send us a nice little note telling us how awesome we are, you can do so at arthouselegends@gmail.com, and I will get straight back to you. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. This is the MovieDude Eric.
This is Chris Tondevold.
This is Cecil from Good Bad Flicks.
And pick up your trash before leaving the drive-in.